Good evening and welcome to the special Valentine's Day edition of the ZWAC show. I am the host, John Moore. Tonight, love is in the air. So cozy up with your sweetie as Susan Kinsella, the director of the Recycling Archives, reads stories that feature how love and zero waste are combined. Popular music tells us that love makes the world go round, that love has no pride, that love is a many-splendored thing, and that all you need is love. But do poets and songwriters wax eloquently about waste? Well, not really. I mean, there's T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, but I wouldn't recommend that to read that on Valentine's Day. But when Romeo first sees Juliet at the ball and he says, "Thou teachest the torches to burn bright," he's really not thinking about incinerating garbage. Tonight, we will not speak of waste. We will speak of zero waste and the people who try to make that possible, because zero waste and its circular economy can make the world go around, because waste has no pride, and because all you need is not only love, but also the 4 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. And as proof of all that, we will hear from another zero waste advocate, Paul Liotsakis, who fittingly on Valentine's Day will sparkle as he describes the business he founded out of love, Sparkl Reusables of Oakland. So with that, I will turn it over to Susan Kinsella of the Recycling Archives.
Thank you. I'm going to share screen and hope that this works well. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that by now, most of you know that we have been gathering interviews at the Recycling Archives from some of the early pioneers and the later innovators of our recycling system. And to date, we have somewhere over 60 to 70 interviews, and I figure there's only maybe several hundred more to go, which I think will be a lot of fun. All of them tell wonderful stories that convey insights and shrewdness that's just as important for improving recycling going forward now as it was then. Much of the work that people talk about was spurred and supported by collaborations with others, and usually the people named are colleagues and mentors. But a few people also talk about how their beloved changed their path in important ways that brought them, often unexpectedly, to recycling. So tonight we want to celebrate Valentine's Day by telling some of those stories. May Pon and Jack Berry. After May Pon died in 2019, her husband Jack Berry wrote a beautiful tribute to her in the Recycling Archive's first volume of collected interview excerpts, which we call The Founder's Hearts. I'll let him tell you about her early recycling work in San Francisco. Jack said, "It was June 1970 when May Pon and 4 women friends started Richmond Environmental Action, or REA, in San Francisco. All 5 had attended a lecture series at the Richmond District YMCA as part of celebrating the first Earth Day that year. One of the topics was resource management. People presented on population and water quality, many other areas of concern. The 5 women decided that they could best take action personally by opening up a community-based recycling center. The University of San Francisco offered their parking lot at Turk and Stanyan. Recycling service was offered once a month. In 1973, REA got a lot of its customers to call City Hall and ask, "Where is the nearest recycling center?" Well, quickly the city started giving out the information, and they also stopped saying, "What's a recycling center?" REA worked with the Berkeley and Oakland recyclers to create the Association of Bay Area Recycling Groups and Environmentalists. And eventually, that organization rebranded itself as NCRA, Northern California Recycling Association, as it expanded across all of Northern California, where it still operates to this day, and notably still operating tonight too. In the spring of 1973, 4 men joined REA, including me. This is Jack talking, of course. We were charmed by the founders into helping. In 1974, one of us was appointed to the San Francisco Planning Commission by Mayor George Moscone, who had come around to see what was with this new thing out in the Richmond. REA got the city's refuse collection and disposal rate board to add a nickel a month landfill diversion credit to the authorized garbage rate. The money collected by this surcharge on garbage would be used to fund community recycling depots. REA launched San Francisco into community recycling so effectively that the company was soon running 24/7. By 1975, REA was on the University of San Francisco campus and had opened 2 satellite locations, and by 1978, REA had helped 9 independent startup recycling centers citywide. But we did more than that. We had always been pushing curbside recycling collection too. Eventually, REA fronted a plan for curbside collection and also proposed that San Francisco's recycling be let out to bid. That caused the city's franchise garbage hauler, Sunset Scavenger, to quickly come up with its own plan for curbside collection. Later, REA pitched the idea of having a city bottle bill as a precursor to push for a state bottle bill. May Pan, a certified public accountant, had done the financials to show the city that even a local bottle bill was feasible. I could go on, but the point is that all of this was begun by 5 feisty women in the spring of 1970. I've had more luck than I was entitled to. I was fortunate enough to meet May Pan and work with her all these years until 2019. May was truly a woman for all seasons. When she was dying, I told her, "See you in the Golden Recycle Center in the sky." And she said, "I hope they don't route you to the big eternal burner." And the rest is and was both history and her story. Well, sometimes life grabs you by the scruff of your neck and firmly leads you into your future. Rick Anthony explains how that happened to him. Rick says, "I was primarily an organizer as I grew up. My parents were union organizers. I pretty much heard union organizing rhetoric every day at home from an early age. In high school, a group of us students talked about civil rights. I organized for the Red Cross, I was working with people at halfway houses, and then I went to college at Long Beach State University, and I watched people getting drafted and sent to Vietnam. I thought the war was a mistake, and I became an anti-war activist. That same year was the first Earth Day. All I really knew was that I was against the war and I was against racism. The environmental movement was just getting going and I was drawn to it as a big idea. Then my girlfriend Debbie and I got married, and she got pregnant. So I needed a job, realizing that I couldn't be a hippie anymore. So I went to the student body president and I said, "Can I have a job?" And he said, "You hippies are always too late, but I've got one job left that you might be able to do. I have this recycling center that was started on Earth Day. The organizers are gone and the volunteers aren't working anymore. People keep bringing materials in and the administration is on my back, so either you clean it up and make it work or you figure out a way to shut it down. Either way, I'll pay you $1 an hour, but you don't get to be the manager. Shin Hori is the manager and you're the assistant manager." Well, I had not a clue what I should do or what that meant. So Shin and I went down to the recycling center and we sat there watching for about an hour and a half. What we saw was faculty wives coming in Cadillacs and students coming in old vans painted all over with flowers and such. They were there putting paper in paper bins and aluminum in aluminum bins. And being a writer and a poet and a political scientist, I asked the question, why? Well, Shin was a business major, so Shin asked the business question, what's it worth? It turned out that there was a paper strike going on in Canada, so prices were up to $100 a ton. We sold our first full paper bin for $1,000. Shin said, "Get more bins." I said, "What's this all about?" That was my first experience of recycling. And I went down to the recycling center with my manager and we observed the job together, saw it happening, and then we figured out what it was worth, and from then on, It was a business idea. So it was Rick's new wife, Debbie, and a little baby that sent Rick on his way to decades of innovative leadership and teaching in the recycling field, first in the U.S. and now all over the world. And here's Gary Liss and Pat Miller. Gary Liss talks about how sometimes you get a second chance to follow your star. When he graduated from college in Massachusetts, he turned down a job in California to return to work in his home state of New Jersey. There he had several jobs as an environmental engineer promoting waste to energy along with recycling as alternatives to landfills, which was consistent with the US EPA's approach at that time. And then, as he tells it, in 1978, I was appointed to the board of the newly formed National Recycling Coalition. That led me to Fresno, California, where the Committee for a National Recycling Policy had organized the first National Recycling Congress in 1980. And there, I met my true love, Pat Miller, who was the recycling coordinator for the city of Fresno. I figured out many ways to get out to California from that point forward. I've done a fair amount of traveling, but I'm not particularly interested in traveling by myself. But I loved traveling in the 1980s when Pat was still in the recycling field. For several years, she and I went together to the national recycling conferences all over the country. Those were especially fun because we took time together to take in the sights and the sounds and the tastes of the host city and state. So in time, after having met Pat, Gary got his second chance to move to California. He applied for and was hired to be the solid waste manager for the city of San Jose. His recycling archives interview was done by Tanya Levy, and Tanya had written a groundbreaking report that ripped apart the arguments supporting incineration plants. In that interview, Gary tells her, I continued trying for a while to argue that recycling and waste to energy could work together, but while you and many others embraced my support for recycling, you also convinced me that the arguments for burning garbage were erroneous. And Tanya answers, we pounded on you every time. Gary continues, well, that's right, but what really got to me was when you asked hard questions that my colleagues at EPA and beyond in New Jersey, all of them major advocates for waste to energy, were unable to answer to my satisfaction. That was a turning point for me. Coming to grips with this failure was an interesting evolution for me. It stayed with me for the rest of my career. Well, towards the end of this interview, Gary says that when he took the job in California, it was really hard for him to leave his family and friends behind in New Jersey. He had to start over from square one with only Pat as his connection to life here. Gary sums it up this way. I didn't leave for the career as much as for the chance to be with Pat. We've been together, well, what turns out now to be 40 years now. We're both products of the 1960s. I feel grateful for having met her and all the relationships with colleagues and friends that came after. For me, working in recycling has definitely made my life better from the very start. And for those of us in recycling, having Gary's immense energy and enthusiasm has definitely pushed the field further to embrace more innovative ideas than it would have if he'd stayed working on waste to energy in New Jersey. So thank you, Pat. Well, now we celebrate two couples who were close friends, and all of them have done interviews for the Recycling Archives. Dan Knapp starts us off by telling us about some of the books that he required his students to read when he was a sociology professor. And Dan says, the Environmental Handbook was an inexpensive paperback. Everyone in my classes had to buy and read it to get a passing grade. It was profoundly influential. For millions, it was the initial call to action for what became Earth Day in 1970. The essays in this book were written by prominent authors all over the world, but the articles were mostly assembled by people who lived in Berkeley, including a writer named Mary Lou Van Devender. They worked in San Francisco at Friends of the Earth, one of the best environmental organizations at the time. Another publication that I read was the journal Not Man Apart, also published by Friends of the Earth, and it was there that I encountered my future wife, Mary Lou. She was a staff writer and editor and often had bylines. I still have a stack of Not Man Aparts from the 1970s. So Mary Lou was a person whose thoughts and reporting I had treasured. I didn't know her personally when I was teaching. I didn't actually meet her until the spring of 1980. Then I met her in Sacramento at the statewide Office of Appropriate Technology, where I was a speaker and she was a staff writer in the publications department. We rode back to Berkeley together on a bus, talking all the while about her environmental journalism and my hands-on experiments in reuse and recycling. We talked appropriate technology a lot. So I asked Mary Lou Van Devender out for an evening the night the Berkeley City Council ended up voting on a project to burn garbage. The plan was to go first to the City Council meeting, where a mysterious workshop was to be held. Then we'd go someplace nearby and have coffee and dessert. So what a date it was. Council ran through the little workshop. They're up on a stage and it's incinerator this and incinerator that, and suddenly they say, and now we're going to vote. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to vote. I was outraged. I stood up in the middle of the audience in the front row. The rules were that nobody got to speak, but there I was. I spoke directly to Mayor Gus Newport, and I said, you are making a giant mistake. Everything in Berkeley is downwind of this incinerator. It will put out all kinds of bad chemicals and metals into your air. That caused others to want to speak. So the mayor went bang, bang with his gavel and said, sit down, everybody. We sat down. And then he said, all right, we're going to have the vote now. And 9 city councilors voted unanimously to build the garbage burning incinerator. Other recyclers were in the room, and Mary Lou, my date. Several of us wrote opinion pieces that got into the local papers. Mary Lou came into this in a big way at this point. She's a great persuader. She invented a powerful slogan that we repeated, give recycling a chance, and that said it all. Well, eventually the recyclers won, but tonight, I want to go back a bit to Mary Lou's interview where she gives us a lot more of the details. She was interviewed by Neil Seldman, who asked her, Neil says, did you ever think of recycling as an actual or possible social movement at the time? And Mary Lou answers, no, I didn't know what a social movement was. I'd been working as a speech theater teacher, an English teacher, and I didn't know from social movements. Neil asks, did recycling excite you? And if so, why? Mary Lou said, not at all. It was just a thing that made sense. So then Neil says, recycling is a big field with a lot of specialties. Did you choose a specialty? And Mary Lou said, no, I chose a man. I did. It's true. I fell in love with this guy. And reuse and recycling is what he was doing, so that's what I was doing. No, I didn't choose a specialty, although the reuse specialty is a very good specialty. And then Mary Lou takes us back to the day she met Dan. Mary Lou says to Neil, who's interviewing her, that's when you, Neil, brought him to the Office of Appropriate Technology, or OAT, in the capital city, Sacramento. I'd left Friends of the Earth and I was working there for the state of California. My title was writer-researcher. OAT workers had brown bag lunches where fine people in the environmental community would come and speak to our agency. Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. Well, you were a brown bag lunch speaker, Neil. The first time you came in, I remember you were up at the blackboard pacing back and forth and talking a million miles a minute, but I wanted to hear you again. I got my brown bag lunch and went to the conference room, and here's Dr. Neil Seldman with this other guy in tow. And you say, you've already heard me once, and I've just run into this other guy at the First National Recycling Coalition meeting in Fresno. He's got a very important message, and so I'm going to turn my time over to him. His name is Dr. Dan Knapp, and he's got an avant-garde thing that he wants to talk about, which is salvaging at the dump. Well, then here's this guy with this giant beard that had 2 stripes on it. It was the days when lots of people had beards, but he had a particularly charming and large, fluffy beard with 2 white streaks in it that were very gorgeous. He was striking to look at. And then he got up and told of salvaging at the dump while showing these slides he brought along in a little box. So afterwards, before I went back to work, I told him how to get on the commuter bus that went back to Berkeley. Later, I met him on the street corner where we workers assembled before the bus arrived. Now, this was a commuter bus that a group of state workers in Berkeley had chartered. The state's Department of Health Services had been headquartered in Berkeley, but then it was moved to Sacramento, and lots of the employees did not want to move to Sacramento. So they arranged for a bus to leave Berkeley every morning. We called it the snooze and booze run. In the morning, you're on the bus at 6:15 a.m., and you go right back to sleep. And then for the afternoon ride back in Berkeley, we had the driver carry onto the bus this little box of white wine and some crackers. So we had the snooze in the morning and booze at night, and I was commuting back and forth to Berkeley on the snooze and booze run. So I got on the bus first. We ended up sitting together. Well, getting on the bus together and that bus ride home turned out to be a really remarkable experience in both of our lives. I found that I could not talk to him and look at him at the same time. I couldn't do it. If I looked at his face, I would freeze totally. And his eyes were illuminated with light from the inside. He was glowing. If I looked at him and tried to talk, I would get lockjaw. Even so, we had a great conversation, a very entertaining conversation, and we got along great, and I had never had that experience before. Well, apparently Mary Lou fell for all of Dan's great date ideas too, because now for decades they have been a great team pushing the frontiers of reuse and recycling through both urban ore and all the work they do on projects that affect recycling all across the United States and around the world. Oops, went too far. Okay. So Dan Knapp and Mark Gorell were best friends who'd met in college in Oregon. At the time, Dan was majoring in Asian studies and sociology, while Mark was studying to be an architect. After college, Mark moved down to California and settled in Berkeley, and Dan followed some years later and crashed with him until he could get a foothold in a life there. Over time, Mark met an extremely talented artist and illustrator named Nancy. He and Dan seemed to have similar ideas about what makes for good dates because, as Mark explains to Dan, who's interviewing him, Nancy and I were just starting to go out, and we were giving a talk, and you were giving a talk on recycling at the Farallone's Integral Urban House in Berkeley. That would have been sometime in 1980, probably. Nancy and I went there to see it. You started going into the whole recycling and reuse and composting thing, no waste. She'd never heard of that before. She said, "Oh my goodness, this is just incredible." She got very excited because it had never occurred to her before that we could stop wasting and build communities at the same time. Ever since then, she's been very involved in recycling and has even gotten herself onto a recycling organization's board of directors. Ironically, Dan says, "You went on a date with Nancy to the Farallone's Institute to hear me talk?" Mark says, "Mm-hmm." Dan laughs, "This was a date?" Well, Mark says, "My first date was going with Nancy to a party. She'd started coming to our 10th Street neighbors' potlucks at my house, but Nancy's house had more room, so we moved our gatherings over there, and I got to know her better. One night after dinner, everybody was going to go out dancing. So I said to Nancy, 'Would you like to go to a party with me?' And she said, 'Sure.' So we went. We were together every night after that for, I think, forever." Dan says, "So recycling was good for you in that way?" And Mark says, "Yeah, it was all about finding out how enthusiastic Nancy could get about recycling after she got the idea. It's not just that, but that was the opening scene where you were telling her what recycling was, and she was figuring it out and saying, 'Oh boy, I gotta know more about that.' Well, she was hanging around with me, and I was doing that sort of thing too." Well, Mark and Nancy married, as you can see from this picture here. They're the ones holding the candles, and became tight friends with Dan and Mary Lou. Mark designed many versions of recycling centers for Dan's projects, while Nancy created influential pamphlets and artworks that helped recyclers win what they called the Berkeley Recycling Wars. The four of them worked together, along with others, to organize the public vote to defeat the incinerator that had been the subject of one of Dan and Mary Lou's first dates, and helped to create a thriving recycling environment in Berkeley over time. John and Kathy Moore. Well, as our final slide, now I want to tell the story about how recycling helped John Moore, our intrepid host of the ZWAC show, successfully woo his wife, Kathy. John says, "This will be my wife Kathy's and my 47th straight Valentine's Day together." Recycling played an important role in its longevity. Drummer Keith Moon of the band The Who also contributed to the relationship. Let me tell you how. In my junior year at Cal, I lived in a student co-op. Every co-op member had weekly jobs. I scored a good one, well, at least better than cleaning the bathrooms. On Monday morning each week, I would get up at an ungodly hour for a college student and ride on a truck collection route for the source-separated bottles from all the co-op residences. There were a lot of green-tinted gallon wine bottles and quart-sized brown-tinted beer bottles. We loaded them into large garbage cans, and for unknown reasons, we pulverized them into cullet, which was kind of fun, before taking them to a site in Emeryville near Powell Street. The driver of the truck and I became pals. When the rock band The Who announced their new tour and its stop at a small San Francisco club called Winterland, there was a lottery to get tickets. I hoped to score points with a pretty Irish girl I'd been spending time with, and I knew the importance of keeping one's Valentine happy. But I didn't win the lottery. However, my co-recycler did win the lottery and got 4 tickets, 2 more than he needed. The last time the band was in town, drummer Keith Moon famously passed out mid-set, causing the band to get a volunteer drummer from the crowd. For this reason, the band decided it would play a small venue when it could have easily sold out the Oakland Coliseum. Turns out this would be Moon's last Bay Area appearance, although of course we didn't know that then. By the dint of my hard and intelligent work collecting bottles, as well as my constant reminders that I had a new girlfriend who wanted to see The Who, my friend caved in and sold me his 2 extra tickets. Not at cost, mind you, but at a more than fair makeup. And it worked. She married me. I mean, after all, shouldn't you be willing to do anything for love, even collect cans and bottles? Well, this auspicious beginning led to John becoming the go-to lawyer for many recycling and environmental lawsuits. So it seems we have both Kathy and Keith Moon to thank for that. And with that, happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and wishing all of you happiness that goes on and on.
Well, thank you very much, Susan, for that loving reading.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. It was fun.
It was really fun. And what wonderful stories.
Yeah.
Everybody is, all of those stories are so interesting.
And that's what all of our interviews are like, just wonderful story after wonderful story. It's really an honor to listen to people and ask them more questions and get really nosy about it and get more details, and it's been fun.
Yeah, it brings me to one of the things that you and I had discussed earlier, and that is, hearing them though, and it would be so interesting to put them to audio, the audio versions, and making them available that way, as well as in a written format.
Yep. Well, we're working on a website, so we hope we'll get some of that. And then this recording will become available too, so that people can check into it later as well.
Yeah,
So from there,
it brings so much more. It brings so much more to my imagination to hear it read.
Thanks, Cynthia. So we'll segue from there into what we do each month, which is interview a zero waste advocate. And tonight, we're fortunate for a Valentine's theme to have someone who actually sparkles. Paul Liotsakis, and hopefully I pronounced that reasonably close.
You did.
Is the CEO and founder of a company called Sparkl Reusables in Oakland. And he is here to talk about what about his business Sparkl. So Paul, tell us about your business.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I guess you can say your Valentine's date has arrived and I'm happy to talk about my business. And it's nice to actually hear some really fun stories. I caught the tail end of it, but what crossed my mind since we're talking about those stories, just to segue into my story, is a friend recently thanked me for having introduced her to a colleague that was through Sparkl, that they've become like best friends now. And I was thinking maybe one day I'll also hear a story about, you know, somebody working for Sparkl and chasing reusables rather than recyclables back in your days. And maybe we'll have a match again in a whole new way. So that was just something that crossed my mind. So everybody, my company, Sparkl Reusables, formerly we're actually called GoBox SF Bay. It's been a long, strange trip down this business that I started back in 2004, end of 2014. I decided to dabble into my own business. I've been working before that in the nonprofit world, and it seems like it's been my cross to bear to be at the cutting edge or bleeding edge of environmental initiatives, whether it was organic food industry before organic standards, energy and wind installation systems, solar systems before permitting laws. And now I find myself here in the reuse and zero waste space while this industry is still at the very beginning of it. So it's been a wild ride, especially in 2014 when I started. There was really no one else in California doing that kind of work. So we're the first reusables to go container service available to the public. And we're still here after many years, and a lot of interesting things in between, you know, from the pandemic to pilots from, we've been piloting reusables from Palo Alto all the way to San Rafael here in the Bay Area. We've helped other programs start pilots as far as away as Hawaii. So that's just a quick, and actually one thing that we do, just to give you an idea, is we have our service dabbles into multiple offers in the reuse space. So we work with cities to pilot reusable infrastructure. For example, we have a pilot in San Rafael at the Whole Foods store there with the reusable containers. These are clamshell containers. We do events. We go to street fairs. We do Earth Day festivals where we bring our cups, our plates, our bowls, and very often we work with the food trucks, and at times, and we're proud to say that we've participated in what I think is maybe the first all reusables mandated street fair in the country. It happened in 2018-19 at Palo Alto's I think it's a Mayfet parade, where the city mandated all the vendors have reusables, and that was an exciting moment for us. We also do a lot of institutional programs. Currently during the pandemic, we have a lot senior meal programs. We do a high volume, higher than we've ever done, with offsetting preventing single-use disposables. We wash about 10,000 items, or prevent 10,000 items every month from going into landfill just from a single meal program here in the East Bay, Alameda County.
So who would be your target customer base?
Yeah, so recently, since the pandemic, we found that institutional programs like schools and bulk meals, like senior meals, are a great partner, and that's a target, kind of like a new target market that we've actually found ourselves in, and that's working out really well, and from multiple points of view, but from an impact perspective as well, just the thousands of disposables. So that's been an interesting realization that, you know, it's outside the the sexiness of like, oh, bring your metal container to the store and let's use reusable at a restaurant. The seniors are receiving meals every day, and they're doing a beautiful job of maintaining and returning them. Yeah, so that's one. I think grocery stores, we'd like to do some additional pilots at grocery stores. So that may be another new target market. So yeah, events, caterers as well. Those are our main.
So I gather from the name that you provide the food utensils and containers to an event. You have staff that then goes and gets them after the event is done, brings them back, they get washed, and then they get reused for the next job. Is that kind of more or less it?
Yes, we, depending on the event, sometimes we also have staff ourselves to help staff the event from the infrastructure side. Yeah, so we do both. We can provide the plates and or clamshells and forks, reusable forks, bowls, or and then the event organizers take care of everything, or they hire us to do the additional part of being there during the event.
So then when you're talking about the senior centers, I take it that some other company provides the food that gets put into the containers that you then deliver to the senior center? So
Yes.
You're partnering with somebody else.
Yeah, well, Spectrum Community Services, for example, here in Alameda County, is that company that is a nonprofit that provides the meals. And from what I've actually tasted their meals too, but they're known for having some of the most delicious meals in the county at these community centers. And we're really proud to work with them. And yeah, we deliver every day to them clean containers. We pick up the dirties. We have a kitchen that with commercial dishwashing equipment, shelves, everything needed to care for these and put them back in circulation.
So one of the things that happened with the pandemic was that people started having food delivered to them more from restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of your business, is to work with restaurants?
It's interesting. Our business started out being just that. It was restaurants and corporate clients, and they had to go hand in hand in our view at the time, because during lunchtime, for example, a lot of companies had their staff would go to all the businesses around that corporate headquarters to get lunch. So we worked with all the vendors, put in reusable containers. There was an app to access the containers, and there's still that infrastructure and some partners around that as well. That hasn't been during the pandemic. We had a double whammy where a lot of these companies pretty much it would be like downtown San Francisco, with ghost town. Mm-hmm. So the restaurants closed. So we had to switch to something that will keep us in business. So we kind of de-emphasized the restaurants, but there are some other new companies that are trying that space. Yeah, so, it doesn't mean that we're not going to be a bigger player in that in the future, but yeah.
So in the space that you are in, are there competitors? And if so, what do you distinguish yourself as?
Yeah, we were for a long time, we were the only ones doing it. And we were thinking, God, it'd be nice to know where, have somebody put some bookmarks to what we're doing and we can compare. And but there are some newcomers. I see quite a few come and go, actually. Just recently, Dish Craft, it was a company that had robotics to wash containers and dishware. And these are $1 million machines that they could have huge volume, and apparently they couldn't survive. Yeah, so what I see, we've helped inform a lot of new startups in the space. People have emulated what we've been doing. I think the problem is big, and the solutions are, I think, fleeting sometimes. So everybody needs to just be cautious entering this space, and I think and be nice to each other and fair to each other. But I think there's room for a lot of innovation and partners.
So it sounds like you're evolving. You're figuring out what works and what doesn't, mm-hmm. what to spend money on and what not. what markets to go into. And that's not an easy thing, because you kind of want to grow because you want to, but it costs money to grow. And if you're buying $1 million machine, that makes it a little harder. Is that kind of where you're at, trying to figure out what's working?
Absolutely, John. You nailed it. We have to be really cautious, especially in the past, being in the nonprofit sector, we always were able to get grants, and we had money to work with. Here, being the person in charge of a business entity doing good in the world, we're a social enterprise, but at the same time, I have family and house, so we have to be really cautious how to proceed. We're a small business. I haven't taken funding from outside sources like corporate investment and venture capital type thing. And I would say I'm proud. We're a small business and we're proud of it, because that's kind of what the space calls for, I feel, at this time. And there are opportunities, but in my understanding of the business world and sustainability, it's not a linear path, and it's a messy. So we have to be cautious, but while moving in the right direction.
What do you see in the future as the directions you're heading?
Yeah, there's a lot of outside forces that will inform that, and it depends on how they come together. Again, I feel like we're still at the nascent stage of this, and the whole industry is at the beginning of this. City ordinances, for example, there's a lot of talk about city ordinances for reusables and mandating charges on single use. They have not come online as fast as they were envisioned initially. I think a lot of thinking outside the box of how waste management is currently funded and carried out, and by who. I think it takes a while to create change and a different mindset. And I think when those mature or materialize a little bit, I think it'll help companies like ours. Yeah.
I normally ask small businesses, what regulatory barriers to entry to their market there are. And it's interesting because you talk about the single-use ordinances, which is kind of like a regulatory system which would help your business theoretically.
Yeah, no, that was meant to put it that way. Yeah, and it's a lot of times that's the opposite happens with businesses, right? There's a regulation that it seems like it's impeding them. No, this would help us. This would definitely help us. Right now, there is no good, other than caring for the environment and doing the right thing. There's really nothing else spurring a business to make a change. The disposables are cheap and they're widely available. I mean, they became expensive during the pandemic, and we saw a lot of inquiries coming in. But and now we're starting to see prices go down again, and they're available, just cheap and plentiful. So those need to be taken into consideration.
We're in California. There's a lot of regulations. Are there any in particular that you feel like are hindering your business?
Good question. There were some early on, up until recently. For example, the bring your own container regulations eased up and got clarified by the California's EPA. That was a welcome change. So, and also, I see some cities still. I mean, again, we were early on, and I have an email exchange with the Department of Public Health in San Francisco that's over 150 emails going back and forth, trying to understand what are we exactly, how should we be classified, how much to pay for a permit. And I felt like that was, there's some there, and that was one city that did it differently. Other cities are not so rigorous. So I think that could be something to look at, is a small business that's just starting out and having a large permit fee to just just for the sake of being there. It could be an impediment, I think, for a small startup.
How many employees do you have?
Yeah, so we have, let's see here, it varies depending on what we're up to. Right now, we're 3 pretty much almost full-time. and then we have lovely interns that help us. And depending on staffing, and during the summertime, for example, that doubles because of events we participate in and such.
Is it like a construction business where you ramp up during the good weather?
You could say that. Yep. Yeah, we definitely have that, and maybe one day we'll keep it at a ramped up level. Yeah, that would be nice.
What cities are you working in now?
Yeah, so a lot of our operations are here in the East Bay, but we go from Cupertino, San Mateo County, Mountain View, all the way to San Rafael and Marin here in Oakland, and multiple community centers are from Union City here to I think there's 7 cities in the East Bay that we deal with our containers. So from yeah, I mentioned San Leandro, San Lorenzo as well. Yeah,
And you're headquartered in Oakland, and your big kitchen is in Oakland?
exactly. Yep, we're proud to be here, and yeah, and we have a home office. I have a home office in Alameda as well, where I'm at tonight. But yeah, Oakland, Alameda is our epicenter.
Do you try to find any metrics to figure out measurement wise how much waste you're keeping out of landfill?
Yeah, we do. We've spent a lot of time and effort and research to come up with as accurate as possible calculations and sources to quantify our impact. And we do this for companies individually. I haven't sat down to do it just for ourselves in terms of like detailed impact for tonnage, but I can tell you that one company I know for a fact that we're about 1.1 million single-use items or containers at this point prevented since our founding. We did over 100 tons of waste prevention just last year alone.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I usually ask people also, particularly the founder entrepreneur, why the heck did you decide to do this business? And particularly because your name is Sparkl. Was it love or money?
Just as growing up, I grew up in a small seaside village in the island of Crete in Greece, and every year, and I love the beach. I spent most of my days at the beach, and it really pained me to see the garbage that was coming on shore, and it was really nasty. And I think that kind of ingrained something in me about caring for the environment from a really young age, and that kind of seems to have carried through all my professional life. So yeah, it's a passion. I wouldn't, yeah, if I was doing this for money, even though we have to do it for money as a business, I probably wouldn't be here right now. Yeah, we would have folded long ago. Yeah, we try to be lean and mean. The problem is big, and we hope to make a bigger contribution towards solving it.
And it's hard to grow. You have to grow slowly, right?
Yeah, I mean, we hope it's what I like to sometimes give an example of is, at what point do we press on the accelerator? I've seen a lot of solar companies, and that's one industry that I used to be in.
Mhm.
Like I was thinking, and I entered it in the 90s, but in the 80s, in the beginning of the 80s, we thought the industry was taking off, especially when there were solar panels on the White House with Jimmy Carter, and so it took another decade to have that or more to have that industry come to maturity. So I'm kind of looking around and saying, is this the time? When is going to be the time? I think during the pandemic that a lot of awareness about single-use trash came online that was not there before. It's a lot more in people's consciousness. I think the economics of it is the next big problem to solve bring the industry in a bigger scale.
So this is part of the Northern California Recycling Association, and we do advocacy, and we certainly advocate for getting rid of single-use utensils. So what can NCRA as a group do to help your business? It sounds like maybe we could help getting municipalities sort of implement their ordinances a little more fervently. Maybe? Is there something else?
Yeah, I have given, I used to be a member. I can't remember if I renewed recently or not, but I'm familiar with all the great people associated with NCRA, and we've presented there, I think, in 2015. But in terms of helping, I think getting the word, we get a lot of support, for example, from Stop Waste, some cities as well. Like if I didn't have some support like that, we wouldn't be at the scale we are now. So we're really thankful for people like Mary Sol at Stop Waste, and that organization itself, you know, the way they're approaching community building around this space. I think more of that should happen. I think, you know, it's Valentine's Day, so I want to say, you know, people working and caring for companies that are in this space and trying to be fair with all of them. I think that's important. And yeah, ordinances, great. I think also it's just some mindset around, like, a company like ours prevents, it was an upstream solution. We prevent waste. We're not seen, I see myself as a waste management company. And I think maybe the evolution of what waste management should be is more in that direction, upstream solutions, and be treated like, I don't want to say like maybe a recycler or a waste management contract company. And some cities have given us money to contract with us to do work, but they're pilot programs, you know, but maybe something a little bit more next level, and having folks at NCRA spur the recycling industry to show that kind of love to reuse, I think would be good.
It sounds more like you're a waste replacement company to me.
Yeah, I mean, there might be, that would be a nice conversation about what, you know, yeah, we could be seeing that, multiple ways to look at that, yeah.
As a growth tool, and realizing that small businesses have to go slowly, but as a growth tool, is there can you get sort of an institutional contract, somebody who uses or wants a lot of events, a lot of, you know, times that they're going to need to have your services, that they, if you have a long-term contract that, you know, you can,
Yeah.
Is that a direction you can go to?
Yeah, that's, I think you've nailed it. It's really important to have long-term relationships and contracts like that. Yep. One-off pilots are, you know, are good for a specific thing. I've seen a lot of corporations that I call, they're really greenwashing initiatives, where they say, oh, we're going to do a pilot, like a Starbucks cups for 1 month.
Right.
And so you ramp up a reuse company to do a pilot for 1 month. They get publicity up the yin yang, excuse me of the expression, but their Instagrams and promotions are going, you know, great for 1 month. And well, while we're here for a whole year trying to make some change, you know. So I think longer term relationships are sustainable and should be looked at that and appreciated for that. Oops, did we freeze here?
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Sure. I think John is frozen.
Yeah, he looks like it. He's normally much more mobile than that. So I wanted to just say, what if you called yourself, instead of calling yourself a waste management company, what if you called yourself a resource management company?
Mm-hmm.
And focus on the, you know, the upstream concept. People are so excited about reduce, reuse, recycle, and that's the natural hierarchy. You're in the reduce part, which is so hard to calibrate, hard to define. But, you know, if you called yourself a resource manager, then people might get a different idea about the value of what you have to offer, because what you have to offer just sounds terrific.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and yeah, it's one of those things where what is the right terminology? It's a new concept, right? A new thing, and resource management is we do that. So
You
It's
could also
waste prevention.
call yourself a waste reduction
Yeah.
business
Mhm.
Mhm.
because you're reducing waste. I think that's one of the frontiers of what we're doing in recycling now, is changing from this idea of diversion, which is almost impossible to measure, to waste reduction, or landfill reduction is really another term for it.
Landfill
You
reduction.
could call it
yeah.
landfill reduction.
Yeah.
And then you're in the landfill reduction business. And the branding is
But also-
terribly important, as Mary Lou just said, to have the right terminology for talking about what you're actually doing
Mhm.
is so essential.
Landfill reduction by resource management, better
Yeah.
resource management.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, you could kind of rethink this and use slightly different terms and put yourself in there's a whole theory of business called positioning. You have
Mhm.
to position yourself in the marketplace, and you position yourself by defining what you're doing,
Mhm.
and that means language. And
Mhm.
basically have to get the right combination of words to really get people excited about what you're doing. I am
Yeah.
personally very excited about what you're doing. I think what you're doing is just wonderful. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, as a business person, I'm curious to know what the startup capital requirements are. Urban North started with none.
Mhm.
You had $45.
Yeah, 45.
Well,
I actually hitchhiked to Berkeley with $45 in my pocket.
wow. Wow.
That's what he
Great.
had when he
That's a great,
started out. Yeah.
great
And then I went to
story.
work for the landfill for 4 days later at $4 an hour.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I started, I did a crowdfunding campaign. I don't know if you're familiar with Indiegogo. This
Yes.
was back in 2013, 14. So we did a campaign and raised 15,000 as my seed capital to
Yeah.
start this enterprise.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
Well, you have equipment needs. You have capital investment right off the bat, because you've got to have all that stuff.
Yeah.
well, in a vehicle to run around in. and
Yeah.
to drive it.
Logistics are a big part of this, right from the bat. Like Mary Lou said, you're right off the bat. Yeah. So, and
Buy stuff.
yeah, we have an EV now. We are happy to say a lot of our operations rely on zero emissions to move these around our containers, because I think the climate component to this is also something that I think definitely should be highlighted.
Well, yes, and your market
Sorry about that, everybody.
respond very well to that. When
Yes.
you're thorough and consistent in how you implement your whole
That was-
wholeness of your concept, people respond to that.
Yeah, well, I really I like what you and Dan said about positioning, and we're in the trenches determining trying to find what's where the value is, and also that pencils out, and that conversation about what kind of company we are and how we can work with cities. I think it's really a very new conversation. I've been putting it out there without like the broader right words, full thinking through the concept, but I know that that's what needs to happen, and I appreciate, and maybe we can have another follow-up conversation about the positioning and the concept terminology.
I do lots of emails. So does Mary Lou.
Delighted. Yeah, we do a lot of emails,
We're-
and
we're-
we've got a whole vocabulary that we generated report on that for NCRA actually, and NCRA has used this vocabulary in some of its conferences, and it changes people's minds
Mhm.
by opening it sort of opens a door in your mind, and you can think differently. more
Mhm.
powerful.
No, I'm a firm believer of that, and let's stay in touch and push the train down the track a little bit more on that particular track.
Great.
We come up with terminology and a lot. We're out in the public talking with customers at Whole Foods, for example. We're out talking with senior citizens about this, so that we constantly have to do education and training using keywords that people resonate with.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean.
Yeah. Good for
Good on you, man. Good on
for
you, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
doing wonderful.
Welcome back, John.
Hello, John.
Is John back?
Screen says
I
he's
don't
back.
know,
I don't know. He's not.
Doesn't look like it. Liz, what if I just ask Liz to talk? She's got her hand up.
And
Oh,
Liz, you're muted.
yeah, you guys can be the moderator, so I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not seeing everyone, so Liz, if you have a question, feel free to
Well,
answer.
we've got Liz and
Yeah.
Angela up for
Yeah,
wanting to talk.
John is sort of back. He's trying to be back.
Okay. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. Yeah, first of all, a big kudos to you, Paul. And I'm super impressed by your attitude about other people coming into the market, because I think you guys are stronger if you welcome more players in your
Mhm.
space. So that was one big thing. And one of my questions is, are you able to take a salary? Or when you said sort of full-time people, are you guys able to do that, is one question.
Mhm.
And anyway, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead and answer. I'll answer you that one, and then go ahead with your other, and I'll remember that one too.
This is my other question. One of the things that seems to be, well, maybe it's not lacking, I just haven't seen it, is the actual carbon impact of single-use stuff. Even if it's compostable, it's still an item that has a carbon footprint. It's still being pulled from ecosystem. It's still displacing something,
Mhm.
using energy. It's displacing life, wildlife. And it seems like there is so much talk about, trying to level a playing field where, certain things have been given a kind of a free pass, like our economics don't support the reality of climate change.
Mhm.
And one of your arguments should be how you aid climate change by reducing the pull of resources from virgin ecosystem. So there should be my actual question is there actual work being done in that exact area?
Great questions. Since on this last one, there is work being done, and I think, and there's been some studies that we've relied on also that quantify, like, at what point what's the break-even point for our containers. One of the main containers we use is a number 5 BPA free container. So like that clamshell after 30 uses beats a compostable and a single-use plastic on every measure: climate, trees, water, and waste. So there has been some studies around that. I think that more needs to be done now past these studies to look at the bigger picture of how to integrate that kind of these numbers with a greater conversation about climate change. There is also the debate about, there's some folks that really are convinced that stainless steel is the main solution for an alternative to the single use.
Right.
And we are, we're container agnostic is what we say. We feel like there's a place for stainless steel, but also there's a place for these plastic containers as well. We move a lot of them, and there's stainless steel is very heavy. There's some really good reasons why we have these as our favorite containers to work with, but we're not exclusively working with them. Yeah, so those impacts, additional impacts, have to be taken into consideration. Absolutely, Liz, like you said. But from all the numbers and the studies I've seen, it seems like the reusables pretty much win every time. It's just a matter of how many times the reusables are actually going to be used. Yeah. And yeah, in terms of salary, this was not my full-time gig for many years. The last 3 years, I would say, it has become just when I was starting to see some more traction in this space. And I'm taking a modest salary, and it kind of varies year after year. And I'm hopeful that we're growing, and this is kind of like the trajectory that will not revert back to. I'm hoping we're going to be a bigger and bigger business.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Angela?
Yes, Angela.
Are you there, Angela?
She's muted. Angela, you should unmute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I missed the first part of this discussion, so apologies. But I'm curious, do you work with schools or any college campuses currently?
Yeah. So during the right before the pandemic, we were working with like UCSF. We were at UCSF, and we were just making inroads in college campuses. We work with. We've been working in a consulting capacity with college campuses rather than piloting during the pandemic. Like Lawrence Livermore campus is interested in starting a new cafeteria, for example, and they want to have reusable infrastructure right from the beginning. UC Santa Cruz. So we're in touch with college campuses and doing more consulting type advisory roles, but schools are, we feel, a good fit for reusables and our service. So we're actually hoping to make a bigger impact in that space.
If we wanted to advertise you, or if we're connected with organizations that are having events or anything like that, how would we get do you have flyers or a website? How do we
get our website, sparklreusables.com is our website, and it's Sparkl without the E, so it's just SPARKL reusables.com, and Paul at Sparkl SF Bay or Paul at Sparkl Reusables is my direct email.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Bonnie here or the organizers can put you in touch with me as well. But if you Google Sparkl Reusables, you'll find us.
Great. And so we could tell people, go on this website and you'll understand what's going on.
Yeah, our website gives a pretty good description of our services, and there's a way to contact us on their website as well. Yeah.
Susan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, it looks like you've got some of your dishes and stuff in the back. Can you give us a little show and tell?
Yeah. So let's see here. We do a lot of comparing. A lot of container manufacturers are talking to us about their products, so we're always happy to see new things coming online. So these are stainless steel by Returner, a company out of Australia, and yeah, they're double walled stainless steel containers. Really beautiful products. So I've been using them and also just having them in case we do have some project that is interested in that particular stainless steel. We have another stainless steel.
What do you use them for? Those two that you just showed.
Oh, these. So this is a great soup container. This particular one.
Yeah, keeps it warm, huh?
Great. Double walled, he said.
Yeah, it's a double walled container. Yeah, and so in terms of soup, this has been our kind of like our workhorse for soup containers. This one here, it's a 16 ounce, and it's we've used it in a lot of different. This is actually a great one at the bulk department too. You could take it at a grocery store and fill it with bulk items. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also, so this 3-compartment clamshell is our workhorse also for senior meal programs, for example. You can also microwave it on low heat for reheating purposes. So that's another one. This single entree clamshell. This is also a very popular size at food trucks, for example.
Okay, so that's plastic. Now, everybody's upset about plastics. What number is that, and is it recyclable once it's?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So this is a number 5 BPA free plastic. Number 5, as you probably know, is if you're going to use any plastic for upcycling, it's number 5. So what happens with these, we're seeing the uses cycling past 300 uses at this time. So yeah, it's amazing how durable these have been. And at the end of life, we have issues where for example, like the tab could break here, some other damage happens. They're actually bundled together with number 5, with all our number 5, and we give them to Preserve's Give Me 5 program, where they make a line of bowls, plates. I wish I had some of the plates now, but this is one of their clamshells. But it's made into, this is a US-based company that makes this particular product. And you can see this green is, they have toothbrushes at Whole Foods, for example, you can buy from Preserve. So our containers are made into bowls and plates that we eventually take into street fairs. So it is a closed loop system in that way.
Geez, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So number 5 is our recyclable. That's new.
Yeah.
To me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Number 5 polypropylene. Yeah, this is really high grade plastic.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything quite like that ever.
Mm-hmm.
So there are still 2. Angela, do you still have questions?
You're muted. And Doug, I see you have a question too.
Yeah, Paul, I really want to commend you for have the tenacity to stay with this for about 9 years now.
Yeah, close to a decade.
Yeah. While you were talking, I took an early quick peek at your website. I guess I'm kind of wondering, because single use is so cheap and available, and we're in a kind of a throwaway society. Do you have a pitch, something on your website that goes into how do you convince people that are used to just throwing stuff away to come over to the reuse side? And
yeah,
you like a Q&A section on your website, or?
Yeah, we have an app that has FAQs, which may be good to just put on our website also, now that you mentioned that. But very often I find that the partners that we work with at this early stage, the best partners from a business angle are folks that already get it and they want to do the right thing. We have spent a lot of time convincing, like we have written proposals. I mean, through the years, I can say that we've written 50 plus proposals to big companies, including Apple, Sony, Google. I mean, we're talking everyone, and we have engaged with them in conversations to show, what we could do for them. And I feel like a lot of times it was us trying to convince them to do reusables, and that takes a lot of time and energy, and nobody's been paying us for that. We hope to get paid, and to their credit, a lot of times they said, Paul, we're not going to implement the wheels of this bureaucracy or this company, it's going to be a 3-year conversation internally. So we have a lot of irons in the fire. You could say that I'm hoping we'll give something back. We also have times where we do help folks start or explain how our program works and what we have learned, and they decide to just go ahead and take that information and do it themselves. It's a wild, it's the Wild West is what I like to say out there. So we have to be careful who we spend time and how much we spend time on. But we've done a lot of trying to convince, and sometimes it pays off. I would like to think that, given the business cycle of advertising, usually somebody has to see something 7 times minimum to adopt. and maybe we're at the number 3 or number 4 now. We just need some more funding to go the rest of the way. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, you're traveling on the roads with a truck, I suppose, or a van, right?
SUV, yeah.
And is that a gas powered van or a diesel powered van, or?
No, I am grateful to and happy to say that it's a electric vehicle powered by 100% renewable power, because it's charged here in the city of Alameda. That is geothermal power. Luckily, our power grid.
What's the brand of the vehicle?
It's a Toyota RAV4. It's a Tesla powered Toyota RAV4.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, there's only a handful made, probably 10,000 or so, and we have one of them.
We're waiting for delivery on a Ford F-150 pickup that's an EV.
Yeah,
and we've got solar on our roof, so it'll all be just.
You're ready, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're not quite ready. We don't have the charging stations yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
no, that was an innovation or an investment I did early on, because I felt like I didn't want to do the calculations when we're giving reporting to companies about their impact. It would have been a lot more extra work for me to try to subtract my carbon footprint from all the driving of the delivery and such. So that was one motivating factor, and the other is just it was the right thing to do, and we had an opportunity to do this. So it's been great to know that we're driving around in that.
Lucky, nice thing. Probably feels very clean.
Yeah, it does. It is nice to know that, I think you have to be mindful of these kind of impacts. The reusables and the containers, I don't know, sexy is the right word. A lot of people like the feel of something like this that is waste free. There's so many different containers out there. It's an exciting time, and folks are promoting it beautifully. At the end of the day, somebody has to care for these, and this is maybe where the Valentine's Day pitch comes in, is like, somebody has to love these items and care for them. Otherwise I think this space is not going to do what it's supposed to be doing, which is diverting and preventing waste. So yeah, we do that. We care for reusables. We care for things. We're a product stewardship company, is what I like to say.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. I've heard somewhere, I've spent a lot of time in environmentalism, and I hear things I've heard things I can't recall their sources anymore, so I don't have very good footnotes sometimes, but I have heard that the natural world spends about 30% of its energy in maintenance. And one of the things that our culture has sort of wanted to drop is maintenance and care and touching. Mm-hmm. And retention of the thing that we put a lot of energy into getting it, and then what do? We toss it out. Mm-hmm. If we put that energy into maintaining and retaining, then absolutely, we'll be wealthier, and the natural world will still have the resources that we built our entire civilization on. So good work in that direction.
Yeah, we have to emulate natural systems. That's a key component to sustainability, and we need maintenance. Definitely should factor in a greater way stewardship of what we have, including the products we use. Yeah. Dan?
Yeah, I'd like to throw in one more kind of real abstract idea here. I'm a sociologist. Profession, and I still practice sociology every day. But one of the other things I am is a phenomenologist.
Oh.
And the basic idea of phenomenology is that when you're doing an inquiry about anything, you get rid of all your preconceptions before you start. and you look at the thing itself in all its wonderfulness and all its roundness and its entirety, and you try to understand it on its own terms.
Yeah.
So if you are then positioning a business as you are doing, and you look at what you're doing and you use old terminology, then you say, I'm in the waste management business. But if you're looking at the phenomenon of your business, you're in the landfill reduction business. Does that make sense? I mean, you know, it kind of goes with that big word with, it has a lot of syllables, but you can read up on it if you want. It's a really interesting way to prepare yourself for any kind of inquiry, is to be a phenomenologist.
Okay, I've never heard of that term before, but it actually has a nice ring to it, and I'm going to look into it. Yes, we need to prepare for this inquiry to change systems, like you said.
Yes.
So I need all the resources I can get to lean in on that side of the equation, because that's really, I feel like we've been piloting for quite a few years. A lot of information, data has come through, and we kind of now need to lean into the industry change and find our place in it. So
You're a resource
thanks, Dan, for
conservation
those
entrepreneur.
tips. Mary Lou, what was that?
You're a resource conservation entrepreneur.
All right. I love it. I'm going to be hashtagging some of those soon.
It's true. It's true.
Well, I think you have another thing that I think is really important in doing business, and that is, it's clear that you love what you're doing and you love the idea of it, and you love the things you work with, and you probably even love your employees.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, that's real, that projects outward from you. And
Yeah.
and that's a very good thing. And it's a good thing for today too, because it's Valentine's Day. Hey, everybody,
Yeah.
let's love each other.
Yep, staying human and showing love to each other and caring for our planet and our things, I think are maybe the good takeaway messages. Yeah, we're all in it together at the end, you know, a competitor or not, you know, or if somebody, I see a lot of cavalier attitudes about like, I know I have the solution. And I feel like I want to say to everyone, you know, you need to humble yourself when you're entering this space.
Yeah, you go
And
into
let's all
this
care
for
for
the
each
money.
other and be
You go
fair to
into
one
this for the
another.
money, and it's the wrong way to go in.
Yeah.
You don't.
You won't
if
go. You won't get anywhere.
Well, you might get somewhere, but you might also end up the way I've seen a bunch of people end up, and that is, there's a lot of unintended consequences that you have to face, and they get you in the end. They bite you on the butt, as somebody used to say.
We try to avoid as many wrong paths as possible by being mindful and strategic. And so far, I would say I've the testament that I'm almost here a decade later. I've probably avoided some of those. And knock on wood, we continue.
Well, you make the right choices. When you have the right attitude, you are well positioned to make the right choices. You know, I used to work for a guy named David Brower.
Yeah, I met David.
Yes. Well, a wonderful and inspirational man. And his last, he was prone to bumper stickers, bumper sticker thinking, and he communicated a lot of his thinking that way, in ways that would stick in people's mind. And the last bumper sticker that he came up with was, we need global CPR, conservation, preservation, and restoration.
Beautiful.
And, you know, but you have to start with the conservation. Instead of wasting, you conserve.
And
So
you're
that's what
conservative.
you're
You're conservative.
conservative.
We are.
People with that.
You've seen the yin yang symbol with the two things whirling around together, the little drop things. That's where we are. And there's conservative and there's progressive. And we come together on those things. We conserve things, so we're conservative. And we provide all kinds of work, really interesting work. And that's
Mhm.
progressive
We've got great jobs.
at good,
yeah.
good wages too.
Yeah.
Very interesting concept, way to think about it. Yeah. A conservative of a different kind.
Yes,
right,
yes.
that's
Dan
right.
keeps telling people, we're very concerned. We can show you what we conserve. Can you
Mhm.
show us what you conserve?
Yeah, put me in a room with a bunch of conservatives and I'm gonna out conservative you.
Well, part of the I feel like when I was creating the logo for the company, I kind of steered ourselves a little bit towards the 50s look, just because there was a lot of knowledge that has come through the ages of caring for products and durable goods that I think got lost in translation and through the 70s and 80s. And hopefully we're getting some of that attitude back and slowing down a little bit and appreciating what we have.
Yeah, slow food. I like your logo. It looks like I'm a child of the 50s and it looks perfect to me, you know, pink and green with that shape and the stuff. Yeah, it's very
Thanks for,
Looks like-
yeah, that's where
it
we
looks
wanted
like a
to
motel
convey tip our hat a little bit to that ethos of kind of need to look back to the past to understand in order to move forward.
Mhm, mhm.
So Bonnie, do you want to have the last word? You're the young'un.
Well, thank you, Paul, for joining us today. And as you can tell, we're a crowd that really loves zero waste, and we only want to see you succeed. And we want to be a resource for you. And if I can, share your email with folks that would like to. And then we also have our recycling update that's coming up March 28th in San Francisco. We'd love for you to be there and you can network and just so you are on this path of up leveling and really establishing yourself in the business. We would love to have you at the recycling update. And then hopefully, the universities, it would be great to see you like working with more universities and sorry John fell off because of the connectivity issues, but we'll follow up with you as well. And
yeah, feel free to pass on and share my email, Bonnie. And I appreciate you having me on. And I'd love to connect with anyone, Dan and Mary Lou. We can continue conversations about terminology at some point. I'd love to do that as well. And I've been going to the recycling updates over the years, and we've just been really busy for a bit here. But I'm going to look at my schedule and see if we can pull it off this year. I know it's in San Francisco this year.
It's in San Francisco, and today is the last day for you to get your early bird discount.
Okay, I've been a supporter for many years. So won't be surprised if I do that. But yeah, I thank you for having me on a special day here for all of us. Hopefully, we'll continue to show love towards one another and the products we use.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to John for picking you as the speaker.
Yeah.
He got a good one. And thanks also to Susan Kinsella for the wonderful Valentines that you gave us on this
that was
auspicious day.
That was nice. And thanks to Bonnie for putting on the show.
And
yes.
Thanks.
okay.
Alrighty. Well, I'm gonna wrap up here, and I hope all of y'all have a great rest of your evening. Happy Valentine's Day.
Same to
Bye, everybody.
all of you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.